of
You, both of
Mrs.
you, I can see both of you moving about as well. I've had a glance of Mary's pyjama bottoms or whatever they are, or are you going to be a chef? I'm not quite sure.
It's Sunday. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible somewhere that it says you can stay in your jammies all day on a Sunday.
Good morning, Vietnam!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? We don't need roads.
Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Batman. I am your father.
My mother always tells me to smile and put on a happy face. She told me I had a purpose to bring laughter and joy to the world. Hey, stop them! Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
Welcome everybody back to the Moviescramble podcast. I am your host as usual, Thomas, and I am joined by John. How are you?
I'm very well, yes. I've been away for a couple of weeks at the Sitges Film Festival over in Spain. So it's been all sunny and 25 degrees, and it's just been absolutely wonderful. I saw 42 films in the time I was there in 9 days, which meant that I came back whiter than I actually went out. But I had a fantastic time and saw some really good films.
Speaking of holidays, Mary's back from her 14th holiday this year. How are you?
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, like I caught a staph infection halfway through this holiday, so most of it was like me crying and wanting to go home. I'm good. I've not been doing anything anywhere near as exotic as John. I've just been working, and shamefully, I've only been to see like one film in the past 2 weeks. But luckily for me, it's the film we're talking about today, so that's good.
Indeed, and it does make me feel better that you were ill on holiday, and that says a lot about me.
Yep.
Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, so you must bear with me. I've also been
Hangover.
drinking, and a hangover and a cold. I would not recommend drinking rum while ill. That's my but I'm not a doctor, so you don't have to take my advice. We are going to be discussing the new Joker film. Now, this is a movie that, when it was first announced, got a lot of controversy based on the idea and the concept of it. It was going to be a standalone movie. It was going to be an origin of Joker. Was going to feature Batman, and it wasn't even really a comic book film. And it had the guy from The Hangover directing. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't that excited. And then Joaquin Phoenix got announced, and my interest definitely peaked, so to speak. Joaquin Phoenix is involved in this. It's going to be something special. They released some still images, released the first trailer, and I thought, yeah, there's going to be something really good. And it wasn't really what I expected, but I absolutely loved it.
I was kind of on board for it from the start, to be perfectly honest, because I just like the concept of a Joker film. I know that we're inundated with origin films these days, but I thought, yeah, the Joker would be a good one to actually go for. It would be nice to see how they do it. And obviously, with Joaquin Phoenix involved, you just know what it's going to be a quality product, because he doesn't do bad films. I mean, you just need to look at his filmography and you see there's very little in there that's anything less than excellent, as far as I'm concerned, especially with his last film, You Were Never Really Here. When you saw the performance in that, it was just totally blew him out of the water. Such a good performance. The initial images were very strange, because I think a lot of people were expecting full-on Joker makeup, the same way that Jared Leto, the first images of him, was fully made up, but this was just like a washed up guy, like long straggly hair and pretty well unkempt, a bit like Thomas this morning.
That's one of the best film related digs I think we've ever had.
And it really piqued my interest. And then obviously, as you say, with the trailers and everything that came out. But initially, it was Martin Scorsese being involved in it that really sort of piqued my interest. I thought, this is going to be something a wee bit different. He doesn't get involved in sort of comic book films. And he's obviously come out very recently and said, which is something we'll go into later. But I was totally blown away by it when I saw it. I was thinking that it was going to be good, but as soon as it started, I thought this is a completely different type of film that I was expecting, and I just loved every single minute of it. I was very unsettled during the whole of the film. It's not a film that you can really say that you enjoy, but then again, it's not a film that you say you'd endure either. It's somewhere in between that. It's one it's compelling. That's a pretty good way to put it, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's utterly gripping, and you can't take your eyes off it for even though you want to at times. You're just utterly transfixed by Arthur's descent into being the Joker, and it's very unnerving, very unsettling.
Yeah, I only saw it just at the end of the week there. I absolutely loved it. Like, I had no idea what I was expecting, but I've always been kind of fascinated by the character of the Joker. I think he is one of those sort of definitive villains that if you were to ask, 100 people to name a movie villain, most of them would come up with the Joker. So for me, I was really intrigued. As John said, Joaquin Phoenix doesn't really give a bad performance. He can do vulnerable and sweet, as he did in Her, or he can do sort of that violent edginess, as he did in You Were Never Really Here. And it's interesting that Martin Scorsese was attached to the project, because for me, this was almost like The King of Comedy meets Taxi Driver. It was this kind of, not an homage to sort of 70s cinema, but it did have huge overtones of those types of films. And I get that there's been some controversy around the film in terms of how they're portraying, mental health and its relationship perhaps with violence, although as somebody who has mental health issues, I don't really like using that term relationship with. But I thought that whilst the character of Arthur was relatively sympathetic in the sense that he'd had, a shitty upbringing, he was sort of the punching bag at work and in life, and, you see loads of examples of that. There's nothing in it that condones what then follows his transformation into Joker. Joaquin Phoenix's performance is absolutely sensational. Like, his physicality, reminiscent of Christian Bale in The Machinist, that really sunken, you can see every sort of muscle and sinew in his back. He's absolutely incredible. And to me, the film was almost like a sort of indictment of maybe capitalism. It kind of had these sort of huge sort of overtones of, resistance and change movements and all that sort of thing. And one of the most beautiful shots in the film is in Arthur's notebook, and it really stood out for me, and it said, what's the funniest thing about having a mental health problem? People expect you to behave as if you don't. And that for me really, really struck a chord, and anyone who does have mental health issues, when you need to literally put on a smile and go to work or whatever, that really struck a chord. And it totally surprised me when the credits rolled and I was like, Todd Phillips, how do I know that name? And Chris was like, oh, it's the guy that directed The Hangover. And that really took me, I couldn't believe that it was the same guy, because the Hangover movies were sort of brash and, really overtly comic, and this was something, that, as John said, it kind of leaves you unsettled the whole way through. But I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, we keep saying how it left us unsettled, and it's supposed to. That's definitely not a criticism or something that be seen as a negative. And you mentioned kind of the mental health portrayal in it. That's really kind of split opinion, where there's been people who think it's been misrepresented, and I am the other side of that. I think it is accurate. I think there's things to relate to in it. But as you say, you do feel sorry for Arthur at points, especially at the beginning of the film, and this isn't a spoiler, it's in the trailer, where you see him getting beat up, and he's beat up by kids. You're just like, oh my God, you're so pathetic, and you feel sorry for him because he's just so pitiful. But it doesn't condone anything he does.
Yeah.
And you see him kind of in some ways he's gradually becoming Joker, and in other ways he always was Joker.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's, is it a comment on has society created this villain because, we're letting somebody with mental health issues slip through the net, and, they've not got a good life in their living situation and all that sort of thing. So there is all these kind of themes running through it. But as you say, it's like, is that something that was, it's the whole nature versus nurture, isn't it? Is that something that was always in him, or is that something that's been brought out by the life that he lives?
Yeah, it seemed to be inevitable to me anyway, that Arthur was always going to become Joker. It wasn't really that he was looking for an excuse or a reason, it was an opportunity. to become this true self, so to speak. And talking about Joaquin Phoenix's performance, he's talking about his physicality.
Yeah.
We see him as Arthur near the beginning of the film. The way he walks, the way he stands, the way he carries himself, it's entirely different to when he becomes Joker. He walks with more swagger. He's a lot more magnetic. He's got a charisma almost about him.
Yeah, and what I loved as well is that whenever he was walking throughout the film, either as Arthur or as Joker, whether he had clown shoes on or not, he always walked like he did. There was like this clear, like, you know what Joaquin Phoenix looks like and walks like, but with this, it didn't feel like we were watching Joaquin Phoenix. It felt like you were watching a completely different person. His physicality was incredible, and the full, credit to the makeup and costume. Dude's walking around looking like John Wayne Gacy when he's got the full makeup on. Absolutely incredible, and a real step away from the previous incarnations of the Joker. And I think that was important as well, is that this Joker was never designed to compete with Heath Ledger's or whoever. It's a completely standalone product, as it were.
When you're watching the film, you forget it's Joaquin Phoenix, and that's an incredible feat to achieve.
He'll probably be totally overlooked come award season, but because it is quite a controversial subject and quite a controversial film. But he, as far as I'm concerned, he deserves to sweep the board. That was unbelievable.
See if this wasn't a mainstream film called Joker. Take away the DC element to it. Make it an independent film. People would be gushing over this in a different way. But there seems to be certain audiences of critics that don't like films like this in the mainstream. They like it being at a certain level.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because as you said there, if this had been some sort of indie, I genuinely think there would be some sort of rallying cry for let's improve our mental health services, because look what happens when people slip through the net. But because it's Joker and it's DC, I think people are like, oh, well, it's commercial and it's just there to make money. So they focus on the wrong things about the film. They focus on the violent elements of it, as opposed to, let's take a look at what happens when we really let people down.
And it's interesting, can I just go touch on the Heath Ledger thing briefly? There's a fan theory regarding his Joker that he was a veteran.
Ah, right, okay.
It's quite a compelling fan theory, actually. And if you apply the same kind of messages of Todd Phillips' Joker to Christopher Nolan's Joker, as Heath Ledger, if you take his fan theory into account, that's somebody else who's also slipped through the net.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Because look at of examples in the Marvel side of things with Punisher and all that storyline of, PTSD and vets and stuff like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And there is a similar quote, actually, from Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which Joker draws some inspiration from, and The Punisher, when the quotes are very similar. You're only one bad day away from becoming me.
Oh, I like that.
John, you went to see a press screening. What was the general feeling like?
It was very positive, to be honest. It was one of these situations where the room was actually full for a change. Usually in press screenings, there's maybe about a dozen, maybe about 15 at the most, but this was completely packed. I think there was like BAFTA Scotland members there and things like that as well, because obviously I think it's one of these films that's getting flagged up for consideration for awards starting next year, even if it doesn't ultimately make it. But yeah, the vibe in the room was really positive after it. A lot of people were saying wasn't what I was expecting. Like we've touched on, it's not a typical comic book film. It asks some really serious questions about mental health issues and the way that people are getting treated in society, which other films, as you say, other films tend to do. One of the other films I saw on that day was Sorry We Missed You, which is about the gig economy, and that's a similar sort of idea about the way people are treated when they're at sort of lower rungs of society and the way they're exploited. And this was exactly the same as that. Yeah, I think it's been reflected in the reviews that have actually come out from a lot of people. They have come out in a very positive way with regards to them. So, it was good. One thing I did like at the very start of the film was the first time that Joaquin Phoenix laughs, which is almost at the very start of the film. And you hear him laughing just before you see him, and he's starting laughing. You think, okay, this is going to go a certain way. It's a bit of a manic laugh, and then when you actually see him, you think, is he practicing this because he's a clown? But then he starts holding his chest and he's writhing about, and you see the guy's in pain. This is actually hurting him. He doesn't want to laugh. He doesn't need to laugh, but he's compelled to. And obviously, it goes into that with the fact that he's handing out cards to people whenever he's laughing in public and everything, saying, I have a condition that causes this. And that really that sets the tone for the whole film right there. The fact that this guy is in control, but he's not in control of certain elements of his life, and those certain elements of his life are going to define what he becomes.
And I think that goes back to what Simi was saying about, is this something that's always been within him? Because he does try to really repress the laughs. Like, you see him struggling against them. I thought the way he executed the actual Joker laugh is incredible. It's what everyone's waiting for, right? They want to hear how he does it. I think it really ties into what Simi was saying about something that's in him all along, and he's kind of fighting against it the whole way, or most of the way through the movie. What I would say about Joker as well is that, unlike most comic book movies, if we're calling it that, they kind of fall down on the third act. The third act in this is possibly one of the strongest I've seen from a DC movie or a Marvel movie. I thought it was, executed really, really well, and certainly drew a lot of audible gasps and reactions in the cinema that I went to see it in. I thought it was excellent, and Phoenix really builds all these different layers and nuances into the character the whole way through, and it leaves you really conflicted. And as you said, John, it's not something you enjoy, but it's not something you endure either. It just sort of leaves you hanging somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, well, probably his surroundings as well, obviously, because it's set in New York. It was late 70s, I believe, sort of 78, 79, I think it's meant to be set. And obviously New York was going through a real period of transition at that time. It was pretty near bankrupt as far as I can recall from the time. It's New York, but New York was obviously the basis for Gotham. Yeah. That's what I'm saying here, obviously. So it was a bit of a shitty city, if you like. There was not much going for it. Everything was grim, everything was dirty. His working environment, where all the clowns are getting ready, it's a horrible wee stinky place with just, it just looks terrible all the time. There's nothing good about it, and that kind of informs his mental attitude and the attitude of everyone around him, like the cops, about all the kids, how they, as you say, how they beat him up and everything as well. And obviously Thomas Wayne, who gets introduced at one point. Now, if you think about how Thomas Wayne's been portrayed pretty much everywhere else, he's been almost this sort of philanthropist type of character. Now here, he's a hard-nosed businessman who may or may not be the man that a lot of people think he is. He's obviously talking about running for mayor here, and he's a nasty character as well. There are no likable characters in this film whatsoever.
That's kind of what I was getting at earlier. The way I read things, or whatever you want to call it, is that I almost felt like Thomas Wayne was being pitched as the villain because Gotham's in this mess, and he's, the kind of yuppie boys on the train that work for him, and he is sort of seen as this kind of bad seed in the city. And I thought it was really interesting because, as you say, up until now, he's been this sort of, martyr figure, and he's definitely not in this film. That's a clear choice that maybe Todd Phillips or whatever has made. He's not who you think he is.
Did you notice the clocks as well in the film, by any chance?
No.
If you think back on when they used to advertise clocks and watches, when it used to be analog, it was always 10:10 that the clocks were set to, because it's a nice, happy, smiling face that they use. Well, in this film, when he's in with his therapist and when he's clocking into work, I think there's 3 or 4 different occasions, the clocks are all set to 11:05. Now, if you think about what 11:05 looks like, it's more of a grimace than a smile. So it's almost like a forced smile. Now, at first, I saw it the first time and I thought, okay, but then when you see it, it recurs, and that's obviously an indication, and it's almost like his state of mind, if you like.
And it's just like the whole thing of him pulling up the two sides of it.
Exactly. It's just one of these wee clever touches that, unfortunately, I'm geeky enough to actually pick up on.
How is this the same guy that directed The Hangover? It's like, I know the Hangover films are very successful comedies. I'm not the biggest fan of them, I have to be said. I think they're very overrated.
He did War Dogs as well,
I
remember?
did like War Dogs. I liked War Dogs, to be fair.
Oh, see, the only other film I could think of that he did was that Due Date, which is also
Yeah, I
nice.
didn't see that, I don't think. Or did I see
Well, that
it?
was pretty much like The Hangover, yeah. That was
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr., wasn't it?
Yeah.
Zach Galifianakis. One of the biggest things from this film was when I kind of really picked this up second time, the score. The score is absolutely incredible.
I've already got it on Spotify. It is like soul stirring. Like the beautiful, cellos and double basses they've got the whole way through. The strings are incredible. Gary Glitter songs aside, I loved it.
Before I forget,
Sure.
is you're saying, John, about how you feel he's kind of like he's practicing his laugh, or you thought he was practicing his laugh at the beginning of the film.
Yes.
He's got two laughs when you watch it. He's got his uncontrollable, like laughter, and he's got this other laugh that he almost puts on when something is supposed to be funny.
Yes, I like when he's sitting in the club listening to the comedian, or he's taking notes, trying to figure out what's funny, and he's laughing. He's looking round, and everybody else is laughing, and he's going, "What are they laughing at? I've got no idea here." But he feels compelled to actually get involved. You're right, yeah. And it's a completely different laugh. Yeah, it's still a forced laugh, but it's not one that actually hurts him because he's in control of it.
Yeah, it's like his uncontrollable laugh, although it's paining him to do it. That's his real laugh. And this other laugh is like, this is me trying to fit in, trying to laugh at things that should be funny, but I'm not finding it funny. And then as it kind of evolves into the Joker, he realizes, no, I actually find this other stuff funny. I find killing people hilarious. I find the nihilism of life. That's where his humour is.
I was going to say, I thought that scene in the club really underlined the fact that he had no idea as to regular social cues and normalcy because of the type of upbringing that he'd had, this sort of odd relationship that he seems to have with his mother, where you're not quite sure if they are sharing the bed or not, and it's all a bit Norman Batesy. And then he goes to that club, and it really underlines the fact that he's not been exposed to sort of normal, patterns of speech, or, as I say, social cues. So he is doing this sort of forced laugh just because everybody else is doing it, and he's so desperate to be part of something and join in. But I thought that really highlighted the fact that he was very much on the outside of everything, to the extent where he couldn't even understand what a joke was.
And it's a very unique kind of origin for the Joker. And if anybody's like fans of comics and that, which I'm sure a few people here listening will be, the Joker's got many different origins. There's no definitive one. People think Alan Moore's The Killing Joke has been the origin story, but it's just one of many. And this just adds to it, in my opinion. And when you see him become Joker in the third act, regardless how he got there, he's undeniably Joker. The way he kind of moves, his mannerisms, his laughter, he's very recognisable. It's very familiar, even though it's very original and unique. It's still very much a Joker you would recognise, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like the way you say, the way he holds himself when he actually fully becomes Joker. He's no longer slouching. When he's there's a scene towards the end, which I won't go into, but he's sitting in a chair and he's upright and his head's up and he's engaging and he's addressing people. And if you think about it, in these sort of later elements of the film, he never laughs. He's very, very, very serious about what he's doing, and he's very focused. And at that point, he can engage with people quite easily because it's on his terms rather than on sort of societal norm terms, because he's the one that's leading the conversation at that point.
Interesting enough, you talk about the kind of laughter. There's one bit towards the end of the laughs, and it's that fake kind of cackle he puts on. As he becomes Joker, he never does the uncontrollable laughter anymore.
Yeah.
And the kind of the last 5-10 minutes of the film, not to kind of spoil it, that's when you see him, he looks genuinely happy for the first time.
Yes, he smiles. He actually smiles as if he's smiling because he's achieved something within himself. He's happy within him. He's happy in his own skin at that point.
Yeah, and unbelievable. So
I'm a big fan of the kind of comedy as a film, and it had so many little sort of Easter egg almost type things that were kind of influenced by that, and I felt like I was watching like a 70s Scorsese movie. I absolutely loved it, and I kind of liked the fact that it sort of backed away from the traditional kind of comic book style, and as I said, I think Joaquin Phoenix deserves a lot of recognition for this, but unfortunately, I think given the controversy surrounding it, I don't think he'll get it.
Yeah, and regarding kind of like this being a different kind of original comic book movie, so to speak, it's Warner Brothers are going to start. This is the first film they're going to launch under DC Black, so we can expect maybe more films like this, where DC's tried the whole big expanded universe thing, and it hasn't really worked for them in the same way that it has for Marvel. And I think their strength is going to be these kind of standalone films. That's where Warner Bros. Has always succeeded. We've got Superman and Batman in that. The Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Reeve, that's those standalone films that's been their bread and butter.
Yeah, all the animated stuff as well, up until, well, I think the first 16 or 17 of those, they were all pretty much standalone efforts, all the Justice League and Batman and Superman and stuff, and it was only then that they actually started to link them. But even then, it was loose enough that you still had a whole bunch of standalone stories. And as you say, that's what made them the money and what earned them the reputation for these characters as well. So, yeah, I think it's good. They've talked about the whole like Justice League Dark and all the sort of DC Dark stuff for a wee while now, and introducing all sorts of characters to it. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think they're basically, like you said in your review, they're basically saying, well, we're just going to do our own thing here. We're not going to try and emulate the Marvel model. We don't have the time to do that. We're just going to do what we're going to do. Now, if it links up later on, fine. But we just want to make quality films and we want to make money. And let's face it, even when they were making films that got completely panned by critics, they still made a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Marvel films, and I do like the big universe and all the crossover. I mean, again, I got to the TV series, I was like, okay, I'm enjoying The Punisher, I'm enjoying Daredevil, and then it just got more and more and more, and I'm like, I don't have the time to watch all of this content. And with DC, they've got a lot of kind of them TV stuff, and for the most part, it's all separate. You can watch Krypton without having to watch Arrow. You can watch Gotham without having to watch the Shazam film. It's like they're all kind of their own things, and a lot of people will, I think, be attracted to the Joker because they can just go and watch Joker. They don't have to watch anything before or after. They won't feel like they're missing out on anything.
Yeah, there are wee bits in there if you are actually looking for that stuff, but it's been marketed as not that type of film. So nobody's really got any complaints when they go and say, where was Superman? Where were the shops? Where were the shots of Metropolis? It is not that type of film. It really isn't.
Well, I think it's safe to say that it's a recommend from me, Mary.
Oh, absolutely, recommend from me.
John?
Yeah, totally. It'll be interesting to see what our end of year lists are going to be shaping up like, because I think this may feature in at least 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny actually saying that I haven't seen a film like it, to be fair. It's just something that really stuck with me. The only other film I can compare it to that I've seen this year is Thunder Road.
Oh, I love that. I was saying up until now, I think Midsummer had probably been top of my list, but now this has changed things.
Yeah.
I loved Midsummer though as well. That was a whole other experience.
Well, I would say if you've seen Joker, obviously you used to have, if you're listening, if you've watched it, go and watch it again. It definitely does merit repeat viewing.
I'm going to book my viewing for like 11 o'clock on a Tuesday where hopefully there'll be no idiots.
You don't listen, do you? You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts.
Okay, well, that's our thoughts on Joker. Let us know your thoughts on Facebook and Twitter and any other way you want to contact us. Since we're discussing one of the most iconic villains in movie history, we've decided to have our top 3 movie villains. Now, for those just tuning into the podcast for the first time, we do operate a draft system, so to avoid picking the same things. Mary sometimes just likes to disregard this system. I have our choices anyway. Just go, I'm going to pick 5 choices here.
Yeah.
We're supposed to pick one each. Nah, not having that. I play by my own rules.
This is a dictatorship.
She has behaved this time, which doesn't happen often.
Yep.
So
I'm not well, that's why you've taken advantage of me in my state.
We were
It's
feeling
not
sorry
often-
for you. That's why we gave you first choice.
Kevin would be first choice, So we picked our top 3 movie villains. We asked you to do the same. We'll go over ours first, and then we'll go to Twitter and Facebook and see what you picked. Mary, as you had first choice, you're first up.
Okay, well, given that we were talking about, controversy surrounding like assault, etc., one of my favourites is John Doe from the movie Seven, played by Kevin Spacey, and everyone knows that I am a massive Kevin Spacey fan. And controversy aside, I think this is one of the best thrillers I have ever seen, and I think that his villain is one of the best, if not the all-time best on-screen villain. I will never forget the first time that I watched Seven, and to this day, the bit where the corpse sort of exhales still absolutely makes me shit myself because I can never work out the timing of it. What I loved about Spacey's villain is that he's very elusive. So you don't really see John Doe for the majority of the film. It's maybe a glimpse of somebody running away or a message left behind. And in fact, Kevin Spacey purposefully avoided all the press junkets when the movie came out to sort of create this real mystery around the character, to sort of not allow people to get to know him, I think. And as I say, all you see is the sort of bodies or whatever that he leaves behind. And I think what struck me is that when you do finally get to see him and he has actual screen time, is that you were expecting a monster, somebody, physically huge, really strong voice, sort of overwhelming, overpowering. And he's not. He's this really calmly spoken, skinny dude. Everything that he says is very polite and straightforward, and that almost sort of sing-song voice where everything's on the level. And I think that's what makes him so terrifying, is that he is so calm. I mean, we see the destruction that he's left behind, the sort of crudely posed bodies and the awful ways that these people have died, but he's not anything special. And I guess that's kind of the whole point, is that villains, or whatever you want to call them, bad guys, are just everyday people that you walk past in the street and that you don't give them a second glance. There is that old statistic of like, what is it, you walk past 8 serial killers in your lifetime or something like that. And I think this kind of plays into this fact that he is just somebody that you would walk past in the street. And obviously as the film builds, this sort of final what's in the box, he retains this level of calm that you just wouldn't you want him to lose his temper and become this sort of, fire-breathing dragon or whatever, but he doesn't. And I think that's what makes him so scary and so watchable to this day, is that he's not this sort of pantomime mustache-twirling villain. He is so calm, so controlled, and just, as I say, a guy you would walk past in the street. It's one of my all-time sort of favourite films because there's so many bits of it that sort of make you jump or make you think, or you see things differently each time you watch it. And love him or hate him, I think Spacey's performance is absolutely outstanding and just utterly terrifying in how calm he is. Brilliant.
Yeah, and it's incredible as well. It's like he's barely in the film.
Yeah.
He's the main villain in Seven. He's the bad guy, and he's hardly in it. And you're just saying about kind of composed and very calm. When he's speaking to Brad Pitt's character at the end, he's trying to goad him. And he goes, "Oh, you didn't know."
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, "Oh, I punch you."
Oh, Thomas, that has actually just given me chills hearing that in my headphones.
It's an absolutely it's an incredible performance in Kevin Spacey's part. And yeah,
but as you say, he's so elusive, and I think that's kind of why I like it as well, that he's almost not the big presence that you want him to be, and that's what makes him so scary, is because he's not there. And you don't know where he is.
Oh yeah, well, Seven's one of my top 10 films of all time. It was sort of a golden period, sort of mid-90s. There was quite a few films come out. He was obviously involved in a few of them. And as you say, it's a performance where you never see him getting angry. He's always in control, even when he's never really in control. But it's all on his terms, every single part of that film. And it's with the best villains, the best bad guys, you hardly see them at all. They're always in the shadows, they're always in the background. They're always getting talked about, but they're never really there. It's like Bruce the Shark. in Jaws as well. The less you see of it, the better it actually is, because there's a mythos that builds up in your own mind about the character as well. So yeah, aye, spot on choice. Well done.
Thanks, guys.
So I'll go next then, since I picked second, and I'm going to go with Clarence Bodica from RoboCop,
Nice.
played by Kurtwood Smith. This is one of the most evil, dastardly, just in your face, slimy, scumbag villains.
I mean, say what you really think.
Yeah, I've ever seen. I mean, it's like he's everything that John Doe isn't in that sense. He's a guy you would walk past in the street and you would just know he's evil. He's got this really like punchable grin. It just looks nasty. He's a cop killer. He has no problem killing his own men. There is no redeeming qualities of this guy whatsoever. And I'm sure most people have seen RoboCop, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's part of the plot. When he kills Murphy at the beginning of the film, he doesn't just kill him, he taunts him, he plays with him. And yeah, there's just nothing likable about this guy whatsoever. Nothing. And he's quite cowardly as well when you see kind of RoboCop try to arrest him, and he just basically spills his guts about who he's working for. Yeah, just a brilliant performance by Kurtwood Smith. Really memorable villain, and he gets his comeuppance in the end when, spoiler alert, he gets stabbed in the throat. And I even love the part at the end of the film when it's kind of like, it becomes an almost comic book bad guy. He's been this really evil, almost like grounded type of villain, and then at the end when he stabs RoboCop with this big massive like pole, and he goes "Sayonara, RoboCop," and it's just like a pure like one-liner. It shouldn't work, and it does work brilliantly. The fact that he calls him RoboCop, I don't know why, just really amuses me. And then, like I said, he gets stabbed in the throat, and it's just a really brutal death, but really, really deserving, really satisfying to watch.
I think he was one of the reasons why the follow-ups never really worked in the same way, because they never had that sort of same level of villain attached to it.
No, but it's interesting though. I mean, RoboCop 2 does have a lot of like faults to it. I do really like the villain. He's that kind of like Messiah like guy who's a drug dealer, but believes he's like really kind of like pure and good.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a RoboCop 5? Because you always seem to pick films that go on to like their 7th or 8th installment, getting progressively worse as they go along.
There is only the 3 RoboCop movies of the original series, but after the third one, they started making like TV movies and that, and they kind of marketed a lot more kind of kid friendly. When RoboCop,
mean, that doesn't seem okay.
Yeah, it didn't shoot people. It would like shoot like a pole, and like things would fall on people and stuff. It was, as a kid watching it, it was actually okay. It was great. It was quite fun. It was quite harmless. But I mean, I watched RoboCop, the actual film, a lot as a kid. This is a movie that was, apart from the content of the actual film itself, should have been a kids' film by all means. This marketable superhero good guy.
I mean, don't say that when those big Marvel and DC execs tune into our podcast. They're going to steal all your ideas, Thomas.
That's very true. Yeah, there's also a RoboCop cartoon as well. But no, John, I do agree. Like the villains, it was more the remake of RoboCop that I felt was missing that villain. It was missing that Clarence Bodica. I quite like the remake. I think it's okay for what it is, but it's got Michael Keaton in it, and it still misses that villain presence that the first movie really has. Like I said, I thought the guy played Kane in the second one. The villain there was quite good, but yeah, nothing beats Clarence Bodica for me. He's just absolutely brilliant.
Good choice. Good choice.
What's your first choice, John?
My first choice is the Reverend Harry Powell from the film Night of the Hunter. Now, I think I've spoken about Night of the Hunter before. I think we spoke about, was it First Time Directors or something?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this is obviously the main character, and he's a preacher man who is also like a criminal and a con artist. He finds out about money that one of his cellmates has hidden away, and he goes to try and find it, and he ingratiates himself with the man's family, and he ends up marrying his wife and basically terrorizing the kids. Now it's Robert Mitchum in the role, and he is so bloody evil. He's a nasty man, and there are similarities to the likes of Kevin Spacey's performance, because he rarely goes above sort of resting heartbeat rate. He's always very calm and composed. He gets a bit worked up when he talks about the Bible and shows everybody his knuckles, love and hate, on both his hands, which is meant to epitomise the eternal struggle that man has with himself and the devil and everything like that. It's such a compelling performance in one of these pretty much perfect films. It's a black and white noirish type film. It's really, really subtle atmosphere to it. It was one that wasn't really appreciated at the time. It got panned critically. It wasn't a commercial success. It was only really later on that people really sort of come back round to it. It was one of Robert Mitchum's favourite roles. He said he had the most fun of doing anything, actually playing the role as well. And it's one of these characters that has been revived, if you like, by others in various like TV shows, and there seems to be quite a lot of sort of parodies of him over the years. Probably one of the best ones is from the Ren and Stimpy show from the 90s. It was, I think, it was the Reverend Jack Cheese, he was called, and he had pity and self-pity on his knuckles, which is quite something. But it's just one of these characters that you just remember. It's one of the main things from cinema. It's just such a good role, and such an evil bastard, especially when he's like terrorizing the kids without actually ever touching them. It's just spine chilling. Really, really good.
Yeah, I love Robert Mitchum, and I think that's one of his best. Like, but again, he's one of these like actors who he's quite handsome, like I think in a kind of unusual way, and he probably could have gone another route with his career, but he did make really interesting choices with the roles that he played, and he sort of stayed away from the sort of kind of pretty boy kind of hero looks and went for something different. And Night of the Hunter is a fantastic film.
I've still not seen it.
Well, I was inspired by you guys, and I watched Kill Bill for the first time when I was in my sick bed, and I finally understood what you were talking about on our Tarantino podcast, which was nice.
Okay, Mary, your next choice.
Okay, so my next choice is my favourite film of all time, which is Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, and the villain in that is obviously Uncle Charlie, played by Joseph Cotton. I love this kind of for the same reasons that I love the John Doe character, in the sense that Charlie is, sort of kind of classically suave. He's suited and booted. He's very popular wherever he goes. He's seen as a sort of nice guy. He doesn't raise his voice. As John said, everything's at that sort of, rest and heartbeat kind of level. But he's also, a really good con artist, because everyone in his family, apart from his niece, which I'll get onto later, and everyone in the town that he goes to visit, thinks he's this great guy. He holds the door open. He makes sure that his family have presents that he's, bought from traveling, all this sort of thing. But underneath all of that is, the fact that he is a murderer. And one of my favourite scenes, I think this is why I love this movie so much, is he's sitting at the dinner table and he starts talking about, these kind of widows and how they're sort of pig-like, and they're greedy and they have all this money and they don't know what to do with it, and it sort of builds and builds and builds until eventually Joseph Cotton turns round and makes eye contact with you and the audience. And I remember the first time I saw it, I actually held my breath, because it's very unusual for characters in the cinema, not on TV, to sort of break the fourth wall and actually look at you. And I think when it's somebody who is a villain and somebody who is inherently bad, to actually have that eye contact, it does kind of make your heart flutter a little bit, because you're like, oh no, he can see me. And just a brilliant performance from Joseph Cotton. He's charismatic, he's slick, he's charming, but at the same time there's this real sense of just this total bad guy, somebody who's really unhappy with their situation in life and views other people as prey, really, especially, you know, it's elderly widows that he seems to be targeting. So not even somebody who's his own size, he's preying on somebody who's weaker and in a more vulnerable position because he thinks he has more right to their money than they do. And the dynamic between him and his niece, also called Charlie, so there's this beautiful duality throughout the film because she's this sort of, you know, pure virginal all American girl, but he's obviously the bad Charlie, whatever you want to call it. And they have this wonderful dynamic the whole way through, and she obviously is the one who finally unravels sort of who he really is. And I just think it's, as I say, it's my favourite film of all time, and I just think Joseph Cotten is outstanding in it. Yeah, really, really good film.
A film I also haven't seen.
Thomas.
I know. I don't even have it. I've got a Hitchcock box set there as well.
It's not ever regarded as one of Hitchcock's best, but there's something about it. I love it, and I'll never tire watching it, especially his performance and that whole sort of when he turned around to finally make eye contact with you. It freaks me out.
Was Joseph Cotten kind of playing against type in this film because he's one of these character actors that seems to, I mean, he obviously worked with Orson Welles and he's done quite a lot of stuff where he's been basically a character actor. He's not been like the main antagonist or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. There's certain elements of it of, you know, there's a lot of kind of, in a way, this is a kind of stereotypical villain because there is that whole, you know, wink to the audience of like, you know, he's the bad guy sort of thing. But it's not executed in a way that's kind of hammy or cheesy or whatever. Like Cotton really commits to the role, if you can see that, and I think he does the sort of slick and charming side really, really well. But equally, as I say, there's something that's like, you know, bubbling under the surface, and it's like he's got this kind of pristine suit on the whole way through, but you expect him to take it off and his shirt would be really dirty or something because there is this kind of thing like under the surface the whole way through. And yeah, it's not a kind of stock villain. He is a kind of more sort of nuanced performance than that, but he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant.
Interesting. I'll add it to my list of films that I have never watched, probably.
You should watch Night of the Hunter as well. It's absolutely brilliant.
I know, it's one of those films I've always like, I should watch it as a film. I probably should watch, especially since John mentions it at least every second podcast.
Yeah. One of these days you'll watch it.
Simi, you're up.
Yep. I am going to go with, he was both in Battle Royale.
No.
Yes.
Oh, you've never seen it, Mary? Oh my God.
Sorry.
Oh, you're missing out.
I just have it on DVD. I'll add it to the list.
Well, basically, for those that haven't seen Battle Royale, it's basically a remake of the Hunger Games.
Very good.
Yes. But it's all the school children that are put on an island with collars on and forced to fight each other to the death. They're there against their will, except for one guy, Kazuo Kiriyama, who is played by Masanobu Ando. He is described as probably the one guy who willingly signed up for this. So they're all there against their will, just see school children, forced to kill each other. He actually loves it. He's sadistic, he's enigmatic, he's cold, he's emotionless, and he's a total and utter psychopath. He never speaks the entire film. It's possible that he's even mute, but he's just so cool at how he looks. He's got his kind of like his school uniform is different from the rest of them because he's not at the same school as him. He's a transfer student, so to speak. He's got this like crazy wild like orange hair, and it just looks like a real life anime kind of character, and he stands out so much like physically and visually from the rest of the characters. And like I said, it's just something so utterly cool but evil about him. He's not a likable character in the slightest, and you just keep wanting him to get his comeuppance. But yeah, absolutely brilliant performance. Really, really good character. I'm a big fan. And I mean, that film's got some great villains in it as it is. Takeshi Kitano as the head teacher. He's just brilliant in everything he does. But yeah, Kazuo Kiriyama is my pick. He is awesome.
No, you've sold this. I'm going to watch it.
Because, Mary, honestly, it's a brilliant film. It's so good. The sequel, not so much, but just pretend it didn't happen and watch the first one. I think you'll be hooked with the opening scene, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Especially
My
just
problem was that I watched Kill Bill after I had seen Annika Rice do a Charleston on Strictly Come Dancing that was Kill Bill themed. So in my head now, that's been ruined. So I'm going to try and not watch anything that might influence my viewing of Battle Royale.
well, they went and re-released Battle Royale on DVD, and the cover, it was very influenced by the Hunger Games. I think they even put the Hunger Games on the cover, and you're like, come on. I remember the author from the Hunger Games, whose name escapes me, was saying, I'd never heard of Battle Royale when I wrote the books. I'm like, really?
It sounds almost identical, but sure.
But
I like
yeah.
the way it was described as Battle Royale with cheese. That's how the Hunger Games was described at one point, which I thought was very clever.
It's very clever, yeah.
My third choice is Commodus from the Gladiator film. Another Joaquin Phoenix performance of some measure. This time he's more up front. He's almost if the Romans had moustaches, he would be the one that would be twirling his. He is just evil all the way through. He's a horrible, horrible character right from the very start. When you're introduced to him, you see him practicing his swordmanship with several other Roman soldiers, and everything seems to be done on his terms. It looks very good at first when he's doing it. He's fighting maybe 6 or 7 guys, turning around, slashing and hacking at various people. But then you see, actually, this is all very controlled. It's all on his terms. I'm going to do some mild spoilers for Gladiator, in that when he finds out that he's not going to be taking over from his father, he kills his father, which is not much of a spoiler, let's face it, in terms of the whole film, and basically takes over to do whatever he wants to do. Now, the reason he does it is because he loves power and he loves the adulation. There's no other reason. He doesn't want to rule. He doesn't want to make things better. He just wants to be loved. Now, in his life, he loved and was loved by his father and his sister. And then when his father's missing, he turns his full attention on his sister. And it's not the kind of brotherly, sisterly love that you really can get away with in any sort of society.
I think in Roman times it was probably fine.
Well, even then, I think some people were frowning upon it. And it just defines this character. Now, the way that he plays it is just straight up evil. There's no other reason for it. It can go over the top. He has a bit of an English accent, which all bad Romans appear to have. And it's just it's a fantastic performance, the way that he brings this character to screen, and it is a sort of a boo-hiss performance, but it's very, very memorable.
Yeah, I think it's maybe one of the films as well that maybe introduced Joaquin Phoenix to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm,
Certainly,
definitely.
it's the earliest film I can remember seeing him in, and just thinking, oh my god, this guy's so evil.
Yep. Oh, he's the consummate spoilt little shit in that film. Like, there's everything about him that you're just like, there's no redeeming features. Now, sometimes they try maybe kind of humanize the villains a little bit. No, he's just, everything about him is awful. And it does set up that kind of almost like, as you say, that kind of boo-hiss type of, you're rooting quite clearly for one character over the other, but never in a sort of cheesy way.
Yep.
Yeah, it is very kind of pantomime in his performance, and
Yes.
it really works. It really does work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works for the film because it's that type of film. You want to be fully on board with the main character. You don't want. There's no need for you to hold any sympathy for the antagonist in this case at all.
Yeah, there's that strange thing with his sister, and you're just like,
there's nothing strange about it. It's fairly straightforward, I think.
I thought you were going to come out there and defend
He's
it.
got a fair idea, you know.
I know it was the Roman times and stuff, which didn't seem that kind of film.
Love it.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't really need any other reason to hate this guy.
Just throw in some incest. Just do it.
But I mean, like, I don't want to kind of go into too many spoilers regarding the film, but when you get to kind of third act and he takes on Maximus in a square go, and you're like, what you did, mate? Come on.
But even then, it's on his own terms, you know.
Yeah.
Just cracking. Very good. And the fact that he wears white as well, in that sort of square go, he's made out to be almost he wants to make himself out to be the good guy,
Yeah.
the all-conquering hero and all that. Yeah, aye,
Yeah.
good
Yeah, I
stuff.
think my favourite scene in that film with him actually, and obviously it's a very memorable scene when Russell Crowe gives his speech, but
Mm.
it's just before that when he turns his back on him, he goes, "How dare you turn your back on me, slave?" And he's like really kind of like so like affronted, like what? How the heck is disrespected like this? It goes back to what you're saying, Mary, about him being that kind of spoiled child,
Oh, totally.
you know.
Yeah. Okay, my last pick is Annie Wilkes from Misery, played by Kathy Bates, because I'm representing the sisters on this podcast. For me, when I think of Kathy Bates, I think of Misery. I will never ever forget this performance. And I know you guys discussed Stephen King adaptations on the last pod, and this is definitely one of my favourites. I always remember my dad had a copy of Misery when I was wee, and I used to be scared of it. In the bookshelf, I used to turn it round because the front cover was like this sort of, it was like a kind of sort of caricature of Kathy Bates, and she was sort of heaving over him in the bed, and I used to turn it to face the back of the bookshelf because I was so scared of it. So when I finally got to see the film, it totally lived up to my expectations. It was absolutely brilliant. The dynamic between Kathy Bates and James Caan is absolutely nuts, because in any other film he would overpower her because he is, you know, the sort of tough guy, the sort of wise guy or whatever, but she's fucking mental. Like, there's no two ways about it. She is like peak crazy eyes in a film. Like, every time they sort of close up on her face, she has this maniacal stare going on, but she's almost sort of disarming in her kind of naivety and her sort of sweetness, because you see around her house and she's this kind of, you know, plump sort of mumsy type of woman, not somebody who you would associate with being a kind of villain. But you know, the whole sort of, I don't want to, can we do spoilers? Like, how old is this film? Years old.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
30
go
years
for
old
it, yeah.
almost, isn't it?
you know, she takes a fucking sledgehammer to his legs. Like, what kind of level of crazy do you have to be at? Like, but the worst part is, like, in her head, she's just the number one fan. She just wants to make sure that, you know, he keeps on delivering. I know this, and as you say, you know, John, you mentioned Ren and Stimpy have parodied yours. I'm pretty sure Family Guy have done a parody episode of this as well, where Stewie is Kathy Bates, which is hysterical. But it's just, she is this kind of, like, you know, she's the typical sort of homespun Americana sort of lonely woman, and he, you know, is this strapping good looking author, and the dynamics are all wrong because he should be the one in charge, but he's not. And I think that's why I love it so much, is because she holds all of the power, and he is this pathetic weak character, which is not what you'd expect from James Caan. But yeah, nobody does crazy eyes like Kathy Bates. I think this is outstanding.
Yeah, totally agree. And like, you see at the beginning of the film, and she's quite likable. She's quite sweet. She's quite nice, and
That's, I mean, she's sort of disarming in her kind of
Yeah.
naivety and everything. Yeah.
and by the end of it, you're just like, whoa. And speaking of the scene there with the sledgehammer, I haven't read the book, but if I'm not mistaken, she doesn't take a sledgehammer to his ankles in the book. She saws them off.
What? I've not read the book either. As I said, I was too scared of the front cover. But
John, can you verify that?
I can't remember. It's been such a long time since I've seen it. But was it not I thought it was an axe or something that she
Maybe,
took
aye.
to him.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure she does cut his feet off instead. And I don't actually know what visually.
That's right. Yeah, it
was.
was a meat cleaver, because in one of the copy of the book that I had, there was a meat cleaver actually on the book rather than Kathy Bates. It was when the book came out before the film. Yeah.
I mean, I think reading it, the idea of the feet getting sawed off is worse or cut off, but that image in the film, it just, oh
yeah.
god, that scene is horrific. And
Yeah.
then she's like, after it, I love you. You're like, whoa.
But again, it's like a lot of the villains that have this, like, really, like, okay, she's probably more batshit than John Doe and Uncle Charlie, sort of overtly with it, but there is this sort of level of calmness and stillness about it as well, that you're just like, you are nuts. You are fucking nuts.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's an old film. I'm sure people have seen it, but see when she kills the deputy guy, the wee sweet old grandpa type
Yeah.
guy, and I'm like,
That's
oh,
when she's crossed the fucking line.
I'm like, this is horrible. And yeah, it's just it's been James Caan has dinner with her, and he's trying to kind of like poison her, so he's pretending to be nice and stuff, and she's just so. But at this point, you know she's insane.
Yeah.
But if you just turned this film on, you wouldn't think she was nuts. You'd think, oh, this is quite a nice wee dinner they're having. She seems lovely.
And it's a film that really keeps you on edge throughout, because obviously you're anticipating his sort of escape or what she's going to do next. So again, it's one of these films that you can never sort of settle into, because there's so many moments, like when he's trying to, you know, drag himself and get keys and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, just like a few inches more, just get the keys. But it never, like, you're absolutely overwrought with tension the whole way through it.
Absolutely brilliant. Great choice.
Yeah, good choice.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've went a little more kind of left field with mine. The picks so far have all been pretty grounded, and they're humans and they're quite plausible and believable. I went with Pinhead from the Hellraiser series because, like John in Night of the Hunter, I need to get in a Pinhead reference or a Hellraiser reference at least one point every podcast.
Love it.
And as Mary was saying earlier, I do like picking films that have like start off pretty strongly, and then the time it gets to like the 14th one, it kind of dips a little. But it doesn't matter how bad the film is, Doug Bradley's Pinhead is outstanding. He doesn't really do much else. He's kind of like he's Robert Englund in that kind of sense. You know, he's been typecast as the movie villain. He's the movie monster. He's Pinhead. He's absolutely brilliant in it though, and it's interesting because him and Clive Barker went to school together. They also shared they're also in the same class as Les Dennis, which I think's hilarious.
What? That's so weird.
Yeah, because I remember reading an interview one time and Les Dennis went and said, I could have probably been in Hellraiser if I asked. But Doug Bradley didn't want to play the part. He wanted to play the part of a removal man in the film. This is a throwaway scene, but he felt it was important as an actor for his face to be shown. Clive Barker talked him into playing Pinhead, and it became one of the most iconic and memorable and legendary movie villains and monsters of all time. And it really sets him apart from a lot of like your Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, and even Freddy Krueger to an extent of that time, was how he spoke. He was very polite and eloquent and calm, and he had that very kind of, it was a throwback to the way Christopher Lee's Dracula, the way he kind of presented himself. There was something very astute about him, and he's utterly evil. You know, he thinks it's fun basically to rip people to shreds with chains and cut them up and stuff, but he does it with an order. He's very calm, he's very methodical. He does stuff because that's just what he does. He's bound by his own rules in a twisted way, and like I said, the films do dip very, very quickly as they go on. His performance stays great though. Doesn't matter how bad it is. He played Pinhead in 8 films, and then the 9th one they changed the actor, and they made another one after that, and had a different actor, and it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same, really. You know, he really did bring something to that role, and yeah, that's my choice. Have you seen the Hellraiser films? I think I've asked this before, but I can't remember. I think, John, you've only seen the first one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've only seen the first film out of the series, but yeah, the thing that did stand out was his voice. Like you say, it was very polite. It seems to be for a long time it was the most villainous characters were polite. They were a lot of them were very English as well, and
Yeah.
It's really it's all down to expectations. It's people that you think have more than most people, so therefore why do they need to, what compels them to become what they become, and it is more unsettling because these are the people you're supposed to look up to as well. Yeah, but yeah, it was a fantastic performance. I didn't realize he'd done 8 of them, and I don't know if I ever will get to see the other 7, but you never know. I think they're kicking about on Amazon and stuff like that as well, aren't they? They're always available. Yeah.
Can I ask what made him stop after 8?
Basically, the 9th film, the studio was going to lose the rights, so they made what was called an ashcan copy, where they just made a film for the sake of making a film. A bit like the Amazing Spider-Man. They said the point with this film is it was never meant to be released, just because of like fan pressure and people really wanting to see it. They released it and it didn't go down well, but they gave him the script and said, look, we're going to make this film, and he's like, they're just making this film for the sake of it. This is a guy, mind you, who has made 8 of these films.
I know at 9 he draws the line.
He thought the script of the 9th one wasn't good. There's some interesting things about the Hellraiser series though, because you got the 5th one was directed by Scott Derrickson, and Henry Cavill was in the 8th one.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
so I mean, it does have some kind of some wee gems in there of like people before they were famous type idea, you know. And like I said before about the fifth film, it's actually a decent film. It's very much a straight to DVD type thing in quality, but it's pretty good. The sixth one's essentially a remake of the fifth one. The seventh one's not very memorable. Eighth one's terrible. Lance Henriksen's in it, but he's quite good to be fair, but he's not very good. The fourth one's in space.
How do you go
Three.
beyond going to space?
That is awesome. And said with such conviction too, Simmy, like you're okay with this. The fourth one's in space, but my God, the ninth one is terrible.
The fourth one's also directed by Alan Smithy.
Ah, one of those.
Yeah, and it's to be fair, I actually quite like it. But the third one's interesting because it's not a great film. It's cheesy. Nobody can act in it apart from Doug Bradley. But he absolutely, I mean, it's not hard to steal the show in this film, to be honest with you. But every scene he's in, he's just commanding, and it's got some of the best lines from the entire series in this film. It's probably his best performance. But if you go back to the first film, he's not in it a lot. You know,
That's what we were saying. Like all the best villains aren't really.
I mean, considering how synonymous he becomes with the Hellraiser franchise and how like visually memorable that character is, he's not in the first one a lot. He's not got a lot of screen time. He was never really intended to be this big character, but he was just so good in it that he stole the show, so to speak. That's your
Cool.
homework. Go and watch the first Hellraiser films. Get back to me.
John, your last pick.
My last pick is The Child Catcher from the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang film. Surprising, this surprised me when I actually did a wee bit of research on it. The character was never in the book, written by Ian Fleming. It was introduced to the film by Roald Dahl, who did the screenplay for it. Now, the character basically does what he says on the tin. He snatches children, but he's a character that he is the very epitome of evil. He is a villain right from the start. He's all dressed in black. He is stick thin. He's got a big nose. He wears a top hat. And the way that he holds himself, the way that he moves, his physicality, as Mary has, we were discussing it a couple of days ago, it just, everything about him, the whole package just makes him evil and a villain. Now, the character is played by a guy called Robert Helpman, who was a ballet dancer, and that really comes across in the portrayal of him. Apparently, there's a wee story where during one scene he was actually on the cart that he uses. The cart the cart is almost as much a part of him as like his makeup and his demeanor, because it's there's a facade of it being nice and friendly, and once the children get inside, they actually figure out it's a cage. Well, he was driving this away as part of one scene, and it started to tip over, and Robert Helpman was able to get out of the carriage in such a balletic way that he almost like landed on his feet cat-like. This was Dick Van Dyke who was saying about this, and he was totally in character while all this mayhem was going on around him of things crashing and everything. I just think that the characters that you see when you're younger have the sort of biggest, they have the first impression on you and they have the biggest impression on you. Now, this came out late 60s, early 70s. It was one of these films that kind of forms what you think as an evil villainous type character. I always remember one of my friend's mothers banging on about the fact that when she took her son to see the film, when the child catcher came on and caught the children, he jumped out his seat and ran up the aisle, and she had to go and chase him because he was that afraid of the. And you can't get much more of an endorsement than that for a villain. You know, somebody that's that evil, it makes you want to run away from a screen. Do you think? Yeah, that's just absolutely perfect. Yep. So that's my third choice.
That's
Very
a
good
great choice. I would love with that film. I have so many good memories of watching it when I was wee, but as you say, it's like that kind of formative narrative when you're younger. And it was like, do you remember at school, it was like, you know, if somebody offers you sweeties, don't get in their car, don't get in a van or whatever. That is like the child catcher. It's the whole, lollipops and just get in the back of the van and, oh, look, you're now in a cage. It's exactly what you're told as a child to avoid. A brilliant performance. Robert Helpman is like probably terrorized so many kids it's not even funny.
Yeah, and it's that kind of age you're saying, Joe. I didn't know that either. That it wasn't in the book. And Roald Dahl included them. It's twisted because, I haven't seen this film in over 30 years. I couldn't tell you anything about it, apart from whenever that character's name is mentioned, I get a chill. And it's almost like, you shouldn't be in this film. This is a kid's film. Why are you here? You shouldn't still be terrifying me as an adult.
Yeah, no, it's really good picks. Awesome.
Yep.
I didn't actually get quite a lot of feedback for this question, which surprised me.
What?
Especially compared to the last podcast where everybody wanted to tell us about Stephen King. Didn't get a lot of people telling us their villains, but we did get a few from Twitter. None from Facebook. Boo you, Facebook. First off, we have Bob Steele at BobSteele55. His three top villains are the Daleks, attempt to destroy the entire universe on multiple occasions. The Shadows from Babylon 5. They try to influence the evolution of the entire galaxy by causing wars and genocides over millions of years. And Sauron. Big scary eye. That's enough.
Those are really good picks.
They are.
Yeah, yep. Shadows is definitely a good one. Babylon 5 was one of my favourites when it was on. Yeah, really good.
We also have Jafar77 at JaiFaz in 1977. He's given us two different lists. I think he feels sorry for us because nobody else was contacting us. He's got him as people villains and non-people villains. So first off, he's got Thanos, Joker, and Darth Vader.
Nice.
Doesn't say what Joker, mind you, just says Joker.
Okay.
He also has the alien from Aliens, Jaws, and Predator.
Cool.
Nice.
Very good picks.
Yeah.
Very good picks. And last but not least, we have Jamie Mackay at Jack's number 1. He's gave us Darth Sidious, / Emperor Palpatine, Hannibal Lecter, and Agent Smith. He didn't put Joker in his list because he thinks he's more than a villain. He's probably one of the greatest characters in comic book or movie history. So he didn't think the list was worthy of Joker.
Interesting. I
Right.
can agree with that. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like, if you asked people, name a movie villain, I'm quite sure the Joker would come up quite a lot. He does sort of transcend the comic book narrative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I almost put Heath Ledger's Joker on my list, and then I was even thinking about Scarecrow in the first film. He's great, and then you got Bane, and then I could have just had like a top 3 based on the Dark Knight trilogy. To be honest.
I know it was really hard to narrow it down actually, because there's every Bond film, well, not every Bond film, but most Bond films has given you a really great villain. There's so many Disney villains that the animated villains that I think have kind of impacted my childhood, and you always kind of think of them in a certain way. And there's so many you could pick from. It was really hard to narrow it down to 3.
Yeah, it was difficult. And
Yeah, definitely. I had a couple of Bond films. I had Scaramanga and Le Chiffre, and the only non-human one I really considered was HAL 9000. I thought that was a pretty good one. But then that's slightly different. I don't know if that's really a villain, but it would kind of work. But so many to choose from.
Yeah, loads.
very, very good picks. Now,
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
I'm going to go on a topic here that John alluded to earlier on in the podcast, unless I've cut it out, and apologies if I have. So, Martin Scorsese, he's been in the news recently for his somewhat snobbish comments regarding superhero films, when he doesn't believe they're really cinema, doesn't have any emotional connection, and he described them as theme parks. Now, Martin Scorsese is entitled to his opinion. He's a very successful director. He's earned the right to say if he likes a film or not. But just because he said it doesn't mean it has to be taken seriously, and doesn't mean he's right either. I don't think he is. What do you think of Martin Scorsese's comments regarding superhero films?
I mean, I get that they're maybe not I don't know, like, Schindler's List sort of really worthy Oscar-winning content. But they have a place in cinema. Of course they do, because cinema's not just there to, make you leave in a pool of your own tears. It's there to entertain, and I popcorn blockbusters are part of that. And I think that enjoyment and spectacle is every much a part of cinema as it is making you feel something. And I defy anyone to watch the sort of end of the Avengers cycle and not shed a wee tear. Like, I kind of get what he's saying, because he's made these films that are sort of iconic and part of this huge sort of cinema canon of he's sort of created a kind of subgenre within sort of gangster films and all that sort of thing. And I get that he maybe doesn't see them in the same light, and he's right. They're not these kind of serious worthy films. But am I allowed to go and just not think for a few hours as well? That's part of the fun of cinema.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like he's got a film to promote.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked about it. He gave his opinion. I think too many people are giving credence to it, and he's worked too many people up. Which back in a case of, yeah, old man doesn't like Marvel films. Next. Instead, it's become this big thing.
I'm sure Scorsese will be thrilled with that headline.
I seen something. It was old man yells at cloud. It was Simpsons.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I can't ever think as well. See if he said this about DC films, I don't think people would have cared.
You're probably right.
It's sacrilege. You cannot slag Marvel.
Yeah,
Is he an exec producer on Joker?
He was originally attached, but he fell off the project very early on to do Irishman.
Oh, right, okay. I thought he was maybe stayed on as a producer or something.
Yeah, well, you've got to remember here, as Simi said, he is promoting a film just now, and he's promoting a film that is not coming out in cinemas.
So, oh my God, he's like Angus McFadden.
So he is trying to get a bit of publicity. He's not above that, for all the fact that he is a filmmaker of some renown. He does do publicity, and he knows how to get people talking about his product as well as everybody else. He's not above that. And if you look at some of the stuff that he has talked about and promoted in the past, it's not that far away from popcorn mass entertainment cinema. I think there is an element of him being trying to be a wee bit controversial about it to drum up a bit of business. Definitely, yeah. But again, he is entitled to his opinion. If more than most, I think he is entitled to opinion about what is cinema and what's not cinema. I can fully understand it, but it does rub a lot of people up the wrong way, because for a lot of people, cinema is going along and switching your brain off for a couple of hours and enjoying yourself. That's what it comes down to. It's entertainment. Now, whether you say that's entertainment watching like a whole bunch of people going to the gas chamber in black and white, or people coming out of portals and saving the universe, then it's a difference of opinion, but they're equally as valid. You can't really judge the quality or the popularity of something just purely based on an opinion of one person. It's a debate, and it's a debate that's going to go on, but as long as these films are successful, then they're going to get churned out and people are going to go and see them. But the same way people are going to go and see the Martin Scorsese film as well.
Yep.
It's something funny. Stay down, freak!
Scorsese was asked, he gave his opinion, he didn't lie. I don't think his comments were all that controversial, to be honest with you, but he seemed to ruffle a lot of feathers. Even James Gunn came out and said something about it.
But then maybe because someone like James Gunn probably maybe idolises someone like Scorsese, so nobody wants their mentor or idol or hero or whatever to say, I think what you're doing shit. So there's probably an element of that.
Because a few people, James Gunn mentioned this, and I've sort of people mention it as well, saying when Scorsese made The Last Temptation of Christ, he had like the Catholic Church after him and stuff like that. And I went, you're really comparing that to him saying he doesn't like superhero films?
Jesus, the original superhero?
Well, there you go. You know, I think that's a great way to end it. Anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Nah, I'm good, man.
I'm going to go and see Joker again. I think I really, really enjoyed it. It's good fun, good, just entertaining on so many levels, but like something that actually makes you think as well. So it's kind of bridged the gap between the two.
Thanks again for joining into the podcast, for downloading this, streaming it, however you've listened to it. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please let us know on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, your thoughts on Joker, thoughts for an upcoming podcast. Please email John on... John, what's the email address again?
podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. You could still be the first to email us.
Somebody please email John this email address.
He's lonely. He's sitting there waiting for the little ding to happen on his computer.
I know. It's a sad life.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks, Mary and John, for your time.
No problem.
For people that are unaware, this is a Sunday morning. We've been recording this, and some of us are a little delicate.
And by some of us, you mean Simmy.
I mean me. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
I feel like I know you. I've been watching you forever.
Well, there's something special about you, Arthur, I could tell.
But you don't listen. I'm just trying to make him smile.
Just Joker.